All right. Anyways, we will be using Excel. If you want to, you can use Google Sheets just as well. In the past, I've tried to use this other program, and I've decided it's not worth it anymore. So I just got to take that off the syllabus there. Just don't feel like doing it in the past. It's fun to do, but it's kind of annoying too, in that I have to stop and teach you a whole bunch of stuff. Same way I always felt about MATLAB. The time or two I tried to use it, I felt like I was teaching a computer class just to do something stupid and simple. So it was kind of like a lot more work and a lot more trouble than it was worth. Homework. In the past, I've always done my homework where it's due. Half of it was due at the midterm and half is due it later at the final. I think I'm going to break it up a little differently this term. Some details will follow next week. As far as homework goes, scanning it and or taking pictures of it, whatever you like better, and then there'll be a Dropbox kind of a thing where you turn it in online there on Canvas. There will be quizzes most weeks actually this term. Because of how it is, it's going to work out kind of nice. Some of them will be on the quiz tool, in that it'll be just, you answer the question, put the answer there it is, and then I'll have the computer check it for me. Things like maybe when we're doing some permutations or combinations, something pretty straightforward. How many ways can, I don't know, the first 3 places be in a horse race with 10 horses or something ridiculous? Well, that's a pretty easy one. The answer's right or wrong. There will be some where I'll have you answer on paper and then take a picture and submit it, because I want to see your actual work. So it'll kind of just be one of those, from time to time, I'll change how I want to do it. So from week to week. But I'll keep you informed on that. The exams will be online, the midterm and the final. Of course, they're open book and text, open book and notes, obviously this time. There's nothing we can do about that. That said, though, I'm going to have, normally you'd have 3 hours in class. You have 3 hours in class. I'm going to give you probably 3.5 hours. That gives you half an hour to get it uploaded. So I don't want to hear a lot of the, my computer, this and that. There shouldn't be any of that. You get an extra half an hour to figure it out, unless something random, bizarre happens. But that shouldn't happen very often. Normally we would do some online. We normally do in class. Normally we would do some group problems in class or whatever, work some stuff out, some activities. We will do a little bit of that in this session on Wednesday nights. You're going to get your points for that, basically. So that I'm not going to worry too much about. The most of that 10% you see will be because of quizzes. That's just how that's going to work out. So there's kind of how they're going to break down. There will be a project as well, which, did I leave that off? Well, that's interesting. I'll edit that. Sorry, somehow the project got left out. The project will be on there as well at some point. Just kind of depends. Usually I have 3 or 4 different examples of different things you can do for the project. I have a little more time, I think, this term. I think I do. So I might change it up. But in the years past, that's what I've usually done, giving you 3 or 4 options and then let you go to town on it. Kind of leave it semi-open-ended. So kind of know where we're going, but give you some different ways to get there, I guess. I don't like the way this thing formats stuff. There we go. And then here's what we're going to cover this week. 2.1, 2.2, and 2.3. Those are the biggies that we're covering this week. Next week, you can see, and so on and so on and so on down the line. We're going to start off with probability and kind of go from there and build out. And then just kind of see where we end up. So we start off really easy. People are like, oh, this is so great. It's almost fun. Yeah, it is. And then when you get to like 7.2 and 7.3, we're doing some substitutions and there's some Jacobians and double integrals, and then it ceases to be fun in a hurry. But it's not bad, but it's, it's not as fun as you'd like it to be sometimes. So yeah, I guess that's kind of how that's going to be laid out. Again, details will follow next week, both on the homework, the due dates for some of that, and also when my office hour is going to be, so that you could pop in, I guess, virtually there. I don't know, any questions on the syllabus? It's I think it's fairly straightforward, but if you have any questions, let me know. All right. All right, so let's stop sharing that and let's start sharing. Where is Canvas? So on the Canvas, yeah, there we go. So on the Canvas, on the Home tab, and for those of you that've had me before, I've just used this as a kind of a depository, a repository of stuff. This week, I should be in week 2. Get down there in week 2. Anyway, whatever. So this guy here should be on week 2, but I guess it doesn't want to move. So I'll just have videos up every week. I'll have links to quizzes when the quizzes are up, that sort of thing. If there's a homework due that week, I'll have the link to the homework assignment Dropbox will be in here as well. And I'll try to keep it week by week by week going along down the line. The videos, I've hosted them all on YouTube this term just because, for whatever reason, when I try to post them in here with, oh, wrong one. When I try to do it in here on, blocking my own pop-ups. One moment, please, while I unblock my own pop-ups. Anyway, so 2 reasons. Number one is, for whatever reason, Canvas doesn't play very well when it comes to embedding with the Google Drive folder videos that I have. And then number 2, it's kind of just nice to have them up there and I can keep them separated. Closed captioning is there as well. So, and the best part I think is you can speed it up and slow it down if I don't talk fast enough to suit you. So you can get it over with a little quicker if you need to. Yeah, I don't know. So that's kind of how that's going to be set up. Again, everything will be in here. If there's a quiz during a certain week, there will be a link to the quiz as well on the week in particular that it's due. And I'll try to be, I already have some stuff going on week 2. It's not showing up yet, but there's some stuff hiding in there. And the idea is that I'll try to get about 2 weeks ahead of you constantly throughout the term, since I'm trying to reorganize and make some of this up as I go, so that it's a little more professional than I normally would do, since I taught the class and then I'd have a video ready for part of it already. But I'm gonna try to do it a little differently this term and just kind of keep up on it that way. Okay. Questions about that at all? So I think that's enough of that foolishness. So I think the thing that I want to talk about tonight more than anything else is what's going to happen when we're doing as we start out probability wise. So if you've watched the videos at all yet, it kind of starts off pretty easy. Here's probability. It's pretty straightforward. You get it pretty much dumped on you pretty quickly because it's an upper level class. In about 2 class meetings, you're going to get everything I know about probability, just about the basics of probability dumped on you quickly, and go from there. But what I really like to think about tonight is several things. Number one, what is probability in my daily life? Okay, where does that come up? Okay, so something that I've really focused on the last few years when I teach probability is, how does probability affect my daily life? And some people would say, well, the lottery, well, that's ridiculous. I'm sorry. Some people would say, going to Vegas. Okay, well, good for you, but it doesn't affect me. So what affects everybody, like it or not? Well, the weather. Well, kind of, yeah. Well, where it really affects me is this. When I pull up to a stop sign at, 8 o'clock in the morning, okay, and I look and I can go right or left, and I look and I see that there's, some traffic down here or something's kind of goofy up down here. I decide to go this way. And the reason I decide to go that way is because I have some data built up in my mind, okay? I've been paying attention. I've been recording data in my spreadsheet in my mind, my database, whatever you want to call it. And I know from past experience that if it's 8 o'clock and there's this much traffic, it's going to get ugly going one way. Therefore, I'm going to make my decision to go the other direction, okay? So in our daily life, it's always about data that we collect whether we want to or not. And then we just base our decision based on that, base our decision of what to do on past experience. Now, sometimes, for instance, the first time you ever meet somebody, they may just set you off wrong. And, oh, nice. Of course, COVID. Yes, of course. Yes, lice. I personally, yes, bacteria in the back of the toilet is always my thing. But that's again, that's more of a, it's more of a just an exponential growth situation. If you ever had like a 3-year-old boy in the house, yeah, yeah, you can clean the toilet and it just comes. Oh man. But again, we could talk about that. We could talk about in COVID in particular, and talk about modeling. We'll talk some more about that perhaps later on. Um, in terms of whether we do what we, how safe are we to go this way or this way? What do we get to base our decisions on? Of course, there's all that as well. So based on this, if you've ever met someone who just kind of sets you off wrong somehow or another, and then you make this decision, oh, I'll never speak to that person again. Well, you're kind of a lunatic. All right. Now that said, there's other times when, like for instance, with a wife, there's this one guy, and years ago, the first time she ever met him, she goes, I don't like that guy. There's something weird about him. I'm like, okay, you think you're being ridiculous. And then about 10 years later, he got arrested. He's in jail right now for all kinds of horrible things. And she's like, I told you. I'm like, I know. So I don't disagree with that anymore. That's women's intuition's a real thing. I don't get it, but I don't question it either anymore. But if the first time you met someone and you judge them based on that, well, you're kind of an idiot, I think. Again, unless it's a woman's intuition deal. If you've been around someone for a long, long time, for instance, I'm thinking of this horrible boss I used to have. Every single meeting I ever had with her, almost like 90% of them were awful. Not bad, they were awful. And so every time I had to go see her, I got all tensed up inside. Why? Because for good reason, I'm going to have another terrible meeting coming up. There's no question about it. And you can say, well, what are you going to do? Well, okay, so I'm going to work around her. I'm going to try to find a better way to approach this. I'm going to try to come up with a plan and somehow, ease my suffering, whatever it happens to be. But why am I going to all that trouble? Because I know how bad it's going to be. Okay. If you'd gone into there, like I remember this one time in particular, last year that she was here, I had to go talk to her about something, and it wasn't really good news. And I tried to get out ahead of it, and I was going to present an idea so I wasn't going to get screwed on this deal. And she just stopped me. She's like, I haven't spoken yet, Jen. I went, oh. And then she goes, we're just going to leave it the way it is for now. And then she walked away, and I'm like, and my jaw hit the floor. And I looked at the vice principal next to me. I'm like, what just happened? He goes, I told her to leave you alone this year. I'm like, dude, you've got to give Buddy a heads up on that deal. About freaked me out because I was not expecting that. It was such a sharp 90-degree turn I did not see coming. Because again, we've been conditioned based on our experiences, whether it's, what traffic's like, whatever it happens to be, dealing with interpersonal relationships, whatever it is, we base it on that. Now, obviously, this is stuff that we collect whether we want to or not. But then there's other things, obviously, at work, right? So you might collect data at work. So, we've been collecting data the last couple of weeks about how many kids have access to internet, how many kids have access to computers. What can we do with these things? All right. We've tried things in the past, like, hey, is there a better way to predict how good a kid's going to be in algebra based on what he did in 8th grade? Not really, turns out. But we've tried to model that sort of thing. What can we do to make it better? If you're at a production line and you're seeing a couple of different production lines, is there a difference between the two? Well, I hope not. There better not be any difference in between the production lines, this one versus this one, shift versus shift. There really shouldn't be any noticeable difference at all. If there is, you've got a problem. You should probably figure that out. But the idea with that is you look at it and you go, okay, well, what is the whole point? The whole point of this is to make a decision. Another boss I had one time, I used to be in charge of state testing for the math department when I used to teach math. And so I remembered the year before, there's this kid he wasn't very bright, let's be honest. And he somehow passed the state test. It was a multiple choice test, so I guess it was multiple guessing his way through it, and good for him. And he jumped up and danced a little jig and ran out, and I went over and looked. I'm like, oh, son of a gun, he did pass. And there were several other kids like that year that he got lucky and they passed. So then the next year, we got the state result. Well, I was sent the state results, supposedly the state results, from our district office. And I said, well, these aren't right because this kid passed. So then she sent me somehow or another, she got a hold of some different set of data, which was different numbers, but still equally wrong. And then she sent me another one. And I'm like, okay, where are you just making this stuff up from? So we kind of got in the back and forth. And finally, the superintendent just says, Jay, use the data. And I said, well, I'd love to. Which set do you want me to use? And she goes, just pick one. It doesn't matter. I'm like, okay, you've got to be kidding, crazy person. The idea is that, you know, we need good data. If we aren't getting good data, then any decision we make is going to be crappy, obviously. But we need to make our decisions so that we are, you know, confident. And what do we mean by confident? Well, you know, like 90% confident, 75% confident. We need to base those decisions, and it's all based on probability. Everything we do in statistics, always based on probability. Okay. Now, that said, the reason I wanted to talk about that, to me, that's just, if you keep that in the back of your mind, I think everything in statistics is so much better if one can think of it in those terms. Pardon me, I'm going to plug in my drive. If you can keep it in, well, don't I not have a USB on my, oh yeah, I do. I got a new computer, I haven't run it yet very much. It's fancy. All right, so bring over here. Start sharing over here. I don't know why, but I got Bobby right up in my grill. That's all. Oh, it's funny. All righty then. One moment, please. There we go. So I was going to pull up one of my favorite things, and I hope when I'm done with you, it's one of your favorite things as well. Oh, and then you open the wrong one. One moment, please. Here we go. Cool. Nice. All right, I'm going to share it with you just a minute. Maybe I am. There we go. So what I have here is some data that I made up. I just randomly generated it. Yeah, all kinds of good stuff. Now, obviously, if this was, you know, in the real world, somebody would have filled out a form. I'm not really sure why you're asking what their favorite brand of ice cream is, but whatever, there it is. And as you can see, there's 200 people in this data set. And so I've highlighted it all. If you've never done this before, best thing on the planet right there, pivot tables. I love them so much. And what we're going to do is, oh, we're going to have to hide you guys. You're kind of in the way. Sorry about that. We can do things like this. We can take brand of car and brand of car here and here. I'm going to bring you back up on this computer real quick so I can see what's going on. Maybe I am. Oh, here. So that would be nice to see a face or two. Oh, there we go. Maybe not me. Oh, those people are blank. So I guess it's just there. All right. Anyway, so what we have here, some data, again, just randomly made up data. There's 200 people obviously in this data set. So the question might be, you might be asking yourself is, hey, what's the probability that I reach into a hat, let's say that I get a BMW driver? I don't know. Well, I feel like there's 46 of those guys out of 200. So what is that, about 23%? Yay, and that's fabulous, okay? Again, based on what? Well, based on this small sample that I have here, that's what we're talking about. Okay? Again, in the real world, you're always gonna have data sets, okay? There's always gonna be some data set that we can actually ask ourselves about, okay? For instance, you might wanna know, what's the probability that we get a blue-eyed person? All right, cool, let's find that out. Blue eyes, looks like it's 38 out of 200. Okay, that's for blue eyes. All right, and we can do this till we're blue in the face. Oh, well, blue in the eyes. Do something, okay? We can get crazy with this thing. Oh, by the way, if you've never used a pivot table, a lot of times the person is a little upset right now because the thing over here went away. If you click back on your thing here, it comes back. And worst case scenario, if you ever lose it, just start a new pivot table. It's not a big deal. It's kind of like back in the day, if your computer just crashed or whatever, you just restart it and people are like, what did you do? I just shut it off, started back up again. And that worked? Sure, yeah. Same principle. So don't freak out about that. I remember the first time I started using pivot tables, I'm like, what am I gonna do? I'm like, well, you dummy, just start a new one. It's not a big deal. What's the probability that you get a brown-haired person, check it out, with blue eyes? Okay, now let's phrase that here. Probability that I get a brown-haired person with blue eyes. Another way of saying that is the probability of brown hair and blue eyes. Okay. Now, if you remember, if you've seen the videos yet, you'll see this and I'll make a big deal about it here in a minute. And that's the idea that and obviously we're going to be doing some multiplying in a data table like this. We don't have to. We can find the exact figure for it. But also, and in your book will be denoted by the intersection symbol, which is the horseshoe. That's the opens downward horseshoe, which I'll rewrite that out again in a few minutes. It's in one of the other videos, but just so we're clear on that. So in this table up here, how many people have brown hair and blue eyes? So brown hair there's 44 of those people, but really there's only 9 people right here that fit both criteria. So 9 out of 200. Okay. Now, something that I mentioned, and I'll mention it again about 100 times, is, fractions, decimals, percents, proportions, potato, vodka. I don't care how you do it. Makes no difference to me at all. 9 out of 200 kind of resonates with me because I see there's 200 of them, and 9 of them fit the bill. That's nice. If someone told me
is that is the blonde?
Did I hit blonde?
14 out of 200.
Could it be 14?
Well, thank you.
14.
Thank you. Good catch. Nice. So 7%. Awesome. Anywho, thank you. I have my glasses on. I have no excuse. All right, anyway, so there it is. So 14 of them out of 200 have that. To me, that kind of speaks to me. If someone said 7%, I'd be okay with that. Sometimes we like percentages. Sometimes we like fractions. In this situation, I think a fraction speaks to me. If this is what they told me the percent of chance of rain tomorrow was, I'd be down with it. But a lot of people would be freaked out if you told them it was a 14 out of 200 chance of rain tomorrow. They'd be like, what do you mean? I don't understand. And I've always thought it'd be kind of funny to watch them do that, something like that, because it would freak everyone out. So from a chart, it's pretty straightforward this way. You can kind of get crazy. I'm going to clear these guys out here. And clear these and those. Nice. So let's ask a question. Let's go down here a ways and ask a question. What is the probability that I get a strawberry ice cream and hates math and blue eyes? Oops, that's not how you spell it. Cool. So in that case, again, there are 200 people that I'm looking for. There's 200 people total. I want to know how many of them fit the bill for me. And so in that situation, you can do this a couple different ways. So things we're looking for. Well, favorite ice cream. Favorite ice cream. And then you can break it out by your feelings about math. All right. And then we could also put on there a couple of different ways to go about these. So eye color, you put it here, you put it here. What are you talking about? Oh, okay, whatever, I don't care. Anyway, there it is. I don't know why it got upset with me, but it did for some reason. I don't care. All right, so we are looking for strawberry ice cream people with blue eyes who hate math. And it sure looks like that there are 8 of them. 8 of them out of this whole mess of people. Now there's another way to do this. So I'm kind of going to go at it a little differently this time. I kind of like to filter. Once I get past 2 things and I can do a row and a column, once it gets past that, I like to try something different. So what I like to do is I just go in and filter. But the thing to remember is this: when you filter, now everybody on this chart currently hates math. Okay, so be aware that it's not out of 200 people. It's still going to be out of 200 people, but because we're filtering to get down to the 8 that we're looking for, and it's going to be maybe less confusing to see that, make sure you always ask yourself who's in your hat. Okay, so in this case, it's everybody is in my hat. Everybody's in my hat. That's 200 people in my hat, and 8 of them fit the bill of strawberry ice cream, blue eyes, and they hate math. So 8 out of 200. Now notice, there are 22 people with blue eyes who hate math. See this? That's what this is saying here. That's not who we're talking about. We're talking about of the 200 people in our data set, I don't even see my question now. My question disappeared. Well, it's 8 out of 200. I typed the question, I swear I did. That's our final answer, okay? If you are a person who is offended by 8 out of 200 and you want to write 4 out of 100, go for it. And if that offends you and you want to do 1 out of 25, that's fine by me. If you want to do 4%, that's cool. If you want, oh, don't do January 25th, that's weird. If you want to do 25%, that's cool, all right? Idiot computer. I love how it always thinks it's helping me. You're not helping me. There. Ta-da. Why did you do that? I didn't say equals. Oh, I don't care. Whatever. I don't care. I don't care. Point is, I don't care how you write it. Okay. So do it any way it makes you happy. I will get the right answer. I promise you. Again, I like the filters. The filters are very fun. Just be careful that you're answering the question appropriately because it's, again, very easy to do. Very easy to screw it up. In that you're like, oh, it's out of 22 people. No. The 22 people are the blue-eyed math haters. Okay, and we're not really terribly interested in them, I don't think. Okay. Now, what I'd like to look at on the next one is something different, and I'm going to phrase it kind of like we phrase things all the time in our daily lives. So, of all the strawberry ice cream eaters, what percent, I don't know, love math? Sure, I don't know. So can you think of some other ways to phrase that? Are you talking, Robert? I can't hear you. You're muted, I think.
I hate it when it does that. Out of everybody that loves math, how many are strawberry ice cream eaters?
I feel like that's a little different. That's a little different scenario. We'll look at that in a few minutes. Can you think of another way to say exactly what I just said here? So of all the strawberry people, what percent love math? And that's what I'm interested of. Ice cream eaters is who's in my hat, in other words, okay? So this time, the people that are in my hat, people I will be reaching in and selecting a name out of, those people are all strawberry ice cream eaters, okay? So it would be a different, and we'll do that in a second. We'll actually look at that in a minute. We'll see how many people hate math, and we'll see how many people hate strawberry ice or love strawberry ice cream. Those is a different number, so which means I'll have a different number in my denominator both times. Okay. Do you think of another way to phrase it, someone? Carter.
Yeah. Out of everyone who likes strawberry ice cream, how many love math?
Sure. Out of, okay, say it again. Those who
like strawberry ice cream, how many love math?
Yep. Now, when you say how many love math, how many love math? Different than what I'm saying in that you're looking for a number, I'm looking for a percentage, okay, the way I wrote it. Okay, just be aware of that a little bit. What percentage of strawberry ice cream eaters love math? I like that. That's a good one, Topher. So just be aware of that. It's not a huge deal. You can say it, you can phrase it a bunch of different ways, but just that one here when it says how many, you're looking at a percentage. I'm looking at percentage or a probability. You're looking for a number. Now the number that we need is going to be our numerator there. So we do need to know that, but it's not the percentage, okay? What percent of ice cream eaters, or strawberry ice cream, sure, and those are all really good, okay? Another one that comes up, what percent of people who eat strawberry ice cream and love math? Okay, see that one right there, Bobby, I like that, but be careful there. So what percent of people, okay? So you're saying they're everybody, in other words, right? So you're saying out of everybody, what percent of everybody likes these two things? So interestingly enough, I like that. I like it. It's not the right answer, but if you think about that, it's not the percent we're going to find in a second. We're going to find out of everybody, we're going to find the total number of people who both love ice cream, strawberry ice cream, and love math in a minute, okay? So we're going to find that in a minute, but it's not the percentage of everybody, it's the percentage of strawberry ice cream people. And Shan, I like that. That's pretty cool. pay attention to that in just a second here, because we will do you are trying to find the opposite of what I'm doing, right? So how many strawberry ice cream eaters do not like math, right? Or do not love math? So in essence, that right there is the opposite of what we're going to be finding. Okay, so it's what we call those complementary events, actually. So we'll get to that in a jiffy. Another way, the way that we do this in mathematics, and I hate it. I mean, I like it, but I hate it. So what percent of, or no, what's probably, I'm sorry, I'm backing up here. Probability that we hate math given we love strawberry ice cream. Okay, that's how we say it. I'll write it out in a minute, but we'll use a pipe right here. The vertical pipe bar right here will go where the given is. And so instead of saying the word, we'll say the word given when we read it, but it'll be a vertical pipe that we'll use here in just a minute. I'll show you this when I write it out in a second. Okay. What are the chances that a student who eats strawberry ice cream also loves math? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, both of those are correct. Well done. Yep. So I personally like to teach it this way here. Is this top one. I like to say this: of all the strawberry, what percent love math, or what percent of strawberry ice cream eaters love math? Those are the two that I prefer, because in my day-to-day walk of life, that's a big deal. Now, putting it into what we're talking about today in the news, they were talking about this. You're talking about people who survive this virus that's going around. Well, how do you survive a virus? Well, you have to catch it first. Okay, so it's of the people who have the virus, what percent of them recover or don't recover or whatever it is, okay, or need intubation or whatever it happens to be. We see this kind of thing all the time. You're like, well, what about these people here? Well, they're not sick. So, well, what about them? Like, well, they don't need a hospital. Well, okay, exactly. So we're talking about people who have the virus. So of the people who have the virus, what percent will require this? What percent will require this? Okay. Now, excuse me, the way I like to do this is because the given, or who was in our hat, which was ice cream eaters, I like to put ice cream, I like to put that on my filter. So I'm only going to filter out people who like strawberry ice cream. Okay. And so in a minute, we're going to keep track of this in a second. Now we're interested in their feelings about math. Okay. So there are 80 people who like strawberry ice cream. Okay. Oh, did I say love math? Well, we'll go with fun. How about that? We'll go with fun. So 6 out of the 80 people who like strawberry ice cream, 6 of them love math or think math's fun. Okay. And again, you're dialing it down to the things that matter. Okay. It always bugs me when people get all weirded out about things like, well, what about these people? Well, what about these ones here? Well, we're not studying them. Okay. Well, what about these people here? Well, the doctors aren't looking at those people because they're not sick. Oh, well, yeah, well, that's their job. They look at sick people, right? They don't, like, someone, well, what about these or this or that? And like, well, I don't know. I've never worked on a car like that. Well, how come? Well, I don't know. Because I live in small town America and I don't see a lot of Porsches out here, thank God. That's why, it has to do with where you live. It has to do with kind of things that you do. Although I did work on a Saab a while back. That was a new experience. But yeah, you see certain things. We see a lot of Fords out here. We see a lot of things like that. We don't see a lot of, some very fancy rigs. If you were a mechanic in Miami or somewhere, that'd be a different story. So same thing is true. I always like to talk about, things like if you see a brand new Porsche driving down the street, the classic stereotypical response is, oh, dude's driving his midlife crisis. Well, you didn't even see who it was. Well, it doesn't have to. It's a brand new Porsche. It's a guy your age, Jay, and he's driving his midlife crisis. And I'm like, yeah, okay, well, you're probably right, though. So in this particular neck of the woods, that's usually who you see driving them. You don't see people taking their kids to school in a Porsche, usually. You don't see a guy hauling lumber on his Porsche. You see a guy in his 50s or 60s who can finally afford to buy a fancy car, going and blowing his money on one. Okay, that's here in the Northwest. Okay, I lived in LA for a year when I went to college. And that was terrible, but I'm guaranteeing you the percentage of people who drive Porsches down there is a different setup than it is up here. Ditto with places like Miami, things like that. It'd be different the way it's all distributed. Percentage of people who drive pickups, or specifically four-wheel drive pickups, is different up here versus down in, let's say, down in LA. It's just not the same. So it would really depend on where are you talking about. We do this stuff all the time in our daily lives. So listen, it's 8 o'clock. This has happened. I see a wreck up this road to my right. what are you saying? You're saying, given that all this stuff has happened, okay, then I should do this and such, okay? Or what's the probability that I'll be late for work if I go that way? And these are the questions that you're always asking in the back of your mind, whether you think about it or not, okay? And so throughout this course, that's what I want you to kind of keep your eye on. What this is called conditional probability, what we're talking about right here. And conditional probability is probably the most important thing that we will talk about when it comes to straight probability stuff. Is that given we are talking about an event that is followed, or that is following, or that is going to follow an event that has already happened, what is the probability now? So, for instance, I don't remember the last time I was late for work. In general, I'm never late for work. But let's say that you overslept. I overslept one day. I overslept. I don't know. I woke up. It's 8:15, and even though I just live a few minutes from the school, I get up. I don't know. Something happens. Whatever. 3 or 4 things in a row happen. All of a sudden, your probability goes from, on any random given day, what's the probability I'm late for work is basically 0. It all of a sudden becomes like 100%, yes? Because all of these other things have happened, okay? Whether it's a car breakdown on the highway, whatever it happens to be, all of a sudden what you count on happening is out the window. On any given day, there's very little chance that you get in a wreck. But all of a sudden it starts snowing and it's Portland, and well, it's snowing in Portland, enough said. All of a sudden your probability of getting in a wreck has now gone through the roof, because on any other, I haven't gotten in a wreck in 30 years. But this day you were venturing out in Portland, you're up in the West Hills somewhere, and again, it's Portland, it's snowing, and so God knows, right? All of a sudden your probability has gone through the roof because of all these other things that have just previously happened. What you'll notice there is the idea that dependent probability goes hand in hand with conditional probability. Okay, if it didn't, you wouldn't get tensed up. Okay, so you're driving along, all of a sudden you see traffic starting to kind of back up. You look at your watch, all of a sudden your pulse starts racing. Oh, I'm going to be late for work. This is going to happen. Oh, I'm going to be late getting home. The wife's going to be angry. Whatever it is, and you're starting to get mad. You're starting to you tense up. The reason you're doing that is because you know that this is dependent. What the next thing that's going to happen is dependent on what's already happened, and that is, you're more likely to be late now, or whatever it is. Okay, so dependent probability and conditional probability, they're like, if you will, on 2 sides of the same coin. So oftentimes we're going to be interested in finding out what's the probability of this next thing happening, given that the other thing already happened. Okay, well, or sometimes we're going to want to know, hey, of the times when this first thing happened, what's the probability the next thing happens? Okay, classic example of this is in drug testing. If you are a drug user, there is a higher probability chance that you will be found, that the drug will find, that the drug test will find you positive for a drug test. However, if you are non-drug user, there's once in a while it'll say that you're a user, which is a mistake. It's not very likely, but it will happen once in a while. And like, is it the same probability of messing up with a false negative? No, they're different probabilities. Why? I don't know. It's a chemical reaction in the blood. I don't know. Don't talk to me about that. But what I do know is they're not the same. And so given that the person is a non-drug user, what's the probability they will have a false positive? It's a certain amount. Given that the person is a drug user, what's the probability they will have a false negative? It's a different probability because they're in one group or the other group. Okay. Conditional probabilities and dependent are huge. We're going to talk about them some more this week. But the way I like to look at them first is to look at data. Okay, and then we'll kind of see where we go from there. A minute ago, I wrote this. What's the probability that they love math? given they love strawberry, that they eat strawberry ice cream. And this pipe thing right here, we say it, we pronounce it as given. Okay, so this is the thing that happens first. This is the thing that happens second. That's just how it's done, which from a normal person's standpoint looks ludicrous and weird. And I agree with you. And I would prefer to say, and in my daily life, I do say, what % of strawberry ice cream people love math? Okay, that's how I do it. By the way, somebody, it's Carter, I think you mentioned, where did you go? Come on, share with us. There we go. I think you mentioned something about how many people like strawberry ice cream and think math is great or whatever. There was 6 people. You're right. You're absolutely right. 6 people do both. Okay, but we need to have that as being part of our deal here. That is a part of that's a part of the thing we'll have to know for sure. And then out of what? Why is it June 80th? That's not even a thing. Anyway, and then out of 80 people, who are these 80 people? The 80 people who, again, like strawberry ice cream. I was going to say something about that. Now, oh yeah, here I was going to say. So back over to this screen. I keep jumping back and forth. It's really tricky to do this. Now, so in this case here, what we're saying is the probability of love math given strawberry. What we found was that was 6 out of 80. And on top, those were the people who did what? Well, they love math and like strawberry ice cream. They love math and strawberry. And who was on the bottom? Well, the 80 strawberry ice cream people. So it was the 80, it was the strawberry probability. Now, this is how the book will always write it. So this is why I'm writing it this way for you. The probability of B given A is equal to the probability of A and B over the probability of A alone. Okay? And of course, your book will actually write it like this: A and B, probability of A. That's a big deal when you think about that. Okay? This is the probability that B happens given that A already happened. So the reason I like to do this is because this helps me, I think, sell it to most people. Now, notice that this is a number of people. This is also a number of people. But down here, the book says it should be a probability. Okay, let's fix that. There were 6 people out of 200 that like strawberry ice cream and love math, yes? And there were 80 of them who like strawberry ice cream. Well, 6 out of 200 divided by 80 out of 200 is, well, you invert multiply. Should have taught 6th grade math. Look at me go. And you get 6 out of 80. Okay. Obviously, if I have data sets, I'm not going to do it that way. Okay. But what I'm going to have in the book is I'm going to have questions that'll be similar to this. Okay. And I'm going to do a couple of examples of those in just a minute. Okay? And we'll do some more during the week too in the next week's video. Question on that a little bit there? I don't have any. Oh, okay, I guess not. All right, let's try this. So, did you know in Portland, by the way, whenever I say this, did you know, I'm usually making up statistics, but that's okay. In Portland, I don't know, 5% of cars are stolen. Totally made that up. Did you know that in Portland, 2% of cars, I'm going to say of stolen cars, oh, I'm sorry, let me back up. 2% of all cars are stolen and found. That's nice. That's nice. Now, what does that say to us? I don't know, but it says this to me. Here is all of Portland. Here is the percentage of cars that are stolen. Right, these are stolen cars. That's 5% of the total. They're not stolen. 2% of all cars are stolen and found. So these guys are stolen and found. So the question might be this: what's the probability that your car will be found given that it was stolen? Well, I don't know. Well, yes, you do. It would be 2% out of 5%, meaning that the cops find about 40% of all stolen cars. Okay, that's what that's saying. Obviously, in this situation, if police, for instance, use this kind of thing all the time, the idea of, what can we do, or what percentage chance of these happening here? Well, not many cars are stolen. That's right. Also, not many are found. That's true. If it was something more like 4.2%, then all of a sudden the cops are finding something like 84% of all stolen cars. All right, well, you must live in Mayberry or somewhere where you can't hide a car very fast. Okay, if it was like LA, it probably is more like 40%. That is, people are stealing your cars and you can't get them back very fast. Okay, it's different times, different places. Okay, what about these cars over here? Did the cops find these cars? Well, no, they're not looking for them. Why? Well, they're not stolen, you weirdo. It's the same thing with people who don't have any diseases. What do the doctors think about them? I'm not sure why the doctors care about them. They don't have any problem. All right, you go to the doctor typically when you have a problem, and typically that's why we run a study on people. Hey, I want a bunch of totally healthy people. No, it's weird. People don't do that. So one of my all-time favorite teaching memories, and someday if I ever write a book about it, it's going to go in the book. Was in I'll look up the date last year. I think it was 2008. I always say it was just like last year. It was 2008 or 2010. But I'll never forget. I was at lunchtime and I was reading the paper. I was reading an online article, and it said that it said something to the effect of 1 in 4 teen girls, 13 to 17, have at least one STD. This was a study by the CDC. It was published all over the web. I'll bring it up later so you can look at it for your own self. And I was like, that was, wow, interesting. So I read that during lunch just to see what's up. Former student of mine actually works for the health department, and every year she brings over all sorts of random data about different viruses, different infections around our Columbia County and Lower Columbia, Portland, and Cowlitz County up in by Longview. And it's some very interesting statistics she brings in every year. But so I was like, oh, this is really very interesting. So I read the article and it said 1 in 2 teen girls, 13 to 17, are active. Well, I'm teaching conditional probability today, so this is how I'm starting class. So I came in and I wrote those numbers on the board, and everyone's like, and this one girl stood up and goes, "It's those girls," and I went, "Uh-oh, this is no." So what I did was I drew this picture on the board, and I said, these people have STDs. These people do not have STDs. No STDs. And then I drew this, like so: active, non-active. And then I just waited. So I'm gonna do the same thing now. Any problem with that? Anything you want to talk about that? Anything weird about that?
The non-active STD containing individuals.
What about them?
Why do they have an STD if they're not sexually active?
Well, now just a cotton. What are you talking about? You mean you can't get one if you're not active? That's weird.
The chances are kind of low.
Now, see, that is amazing. That is amazing. You can be born with it, Timothy. You can be born with it. However, I would argue that there's not the same chance of being born with it as contracting it because you're active. Yes?
Correct.
Now, the idea that it matters which side of that you're on, that it changes the probability, says to me that it is conditional. It's conditional probability. Does that make sense? If it was the same on both sides, oh, nice. If it was the same on both sides, then it wouldn't matter what you did, right? Right? I just got one. How'd you get one? I just walked along and I got one. That's weird. Okay. Now,
Have to
there
fell
are
in it.
transmitted diseases that are like that. All right. Clearly,
Like
COVID.
collecting Pokemons.
Nice. But the cold virus, just the flu, all kinds of other hydropoofus you get just walking around are clearly transmitted diseases, but they're not sexually transmitted diseases. Okay. And so I asked the kids, where would you do differently? And they're like, well, you do it like this, I think, Mr. Groom. And so they drew this picture kind of like this. And they said, well, all right. So I said, well, if you look at it, it's so here, let me back this up here. Let me back it up. I'm going to draw it the other way here real quick. I'm going to draw it this way first. There's my 50-50. That is 100% accurate, yes? And so what I have then is this. These people here then basically have the STDs, yes? And these people over here, obviously non-STD. And these people down here, for the most part, are, now there might be just one or two handful down here, all right? But it is not the same probability, okay? I don't know, Topher. That's interesting. I don't know. Rats, maybe? Anywho, back to this deal here. So if you look at this, here's this question for you. What's the probability the person has an STD given that they're active? What would that be?
I mean, from your dimensions, it looks like 50-50, but from the math, it'd be 25%.
No. Careful. What's the given that the people are active? We're not interested in the non-active people.
Yeah.
Yes?
Active.
Yes?
Okay, 50-50.
It is 50. It's 25% out of 50%, which is 1 and 2, or 1/2, or 50-50, as you stated. Okay? It's 1/4 divided by half. 20. No, not 20. Careful now. It's not 25% of the 50%. It's half of the 50%. That makes sense? It's 25% is out of everybody, right? That's this box right here. This is 25% of everyone. Okay? This is 50% of everyone. This 50% of everyone becomes my new denominator. That's the people that we're talking about, right? We're only interested in that half of the population. And of that half of the population, half have the problem. Okay? And then, of course, at this point, everyone's like, what? And yeah, okay, whatever. So we're having a conversation. And this one boy in the back of the room starts freaking out. I'll never forget it. I'd like to see the kid again. I haven't seen him in years. He probably has 8 or 10 kids by now. I taught a bunch of his family. They're a Mormon family, nice people. They had probably 8 kids in their family. I think he was the youngest of the bunch. And he was freaking out. I'm like, what's your problem, dude? He's like, well, they're all have a problem, man. Oh my God. I'm like, dude, I said, have you been on a date yet? And he's like, no. I'm like, and when you do, it's going to be something at the church when you're going to be like hanging out, just, I don't know, whatever, playing games, something. He's like, well, yeah. I'm like, and most of the gals that you are going to go to your church, that's who you're going to date from, yeah? And he's like, so that's like most of the bottom of that box, right? He's like, well, yeah. I'm like, hey, what's your problem? And he goes, oh, I guess you're right. I'm like, okay. And these other kids over there high-fiving. I'm like, now you two idiots, you should be concerned, okay? Because you probably hang out on one side of the pool a lot more than the other, okay? So just be aware of this. This is what it's all about. Whenever time we are looking at conditional probability, this is what it's going to be like almost exclusively in our daily lives when it comes to applying probability, because something has already happened. We are over here, we're there, we're everywhere. For instance, an example of this that's to begin, I like that. So an example of this that comes to mind sometimes is the idea that I say that. Come on, Jay. Oh, I hate when I lose my train of thought. Darn it, Robert, I want to hide you. You made me lose my train of thought. Okay, well, anyway. So a couple other things we'll talk about, but I'll just maybe I'll save some of the rest of them for the rest of the presentation I'm going to do this next week in the video about conditional. But it'll be things like, what's the probability that this plant produces, we talk about, these tomatoes here, and this one gets, no fertilizer. These ones get, fertilizer. Obviously, then we talk about, hey, what's the probability that you grow over a certain amount of, pounds of tomatoes, given that you give them fertilizer. And you talk about the differences between these guys, and you'll see that there's a huge chance that these guys over here produce more than these guys over here. It's not just random. I mean, it's not gonna be something that's just randomly happened. It's because something that we did. In this case, we applied fertilizer to it. Very few things in our daily lives don't have a dependent component to it. There's very few things that don't, okay? You get up late, you're late for work. You know, something happens, your boss yells at you. Now your boss might be a jerk like my old boss, and she yelled all the time. That's another story. But oftentimes in your daily life, something happens that affects everything else, okay? And usually it's this, well, sometimes it spirals quickly. It's funny to watch some people when when something happens to them, they just all of a sudden spiral out of control. And you're like, what happened? Well, this happened. I'm like, okay, so, well, now this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and that, and okay. And sometimes of course, they spiral way too fast. But what they're saying in their mind is that they understand conditional probability. Because this happened, then the next thing to happen is very much likely to happen, and then the next thing after that is very much likely to happen. All based on that one thing, if you will, the butterfly effect. And now I remember what it was. This kid, if you drop out of high school, what's the probability that you become a doctor? Okay, so what I say by that is probability you become a doctor given that you drop out. Well, I'll tell you right now, it's not good. Okay, it wasn't very good to start with. There's not a lot of doctors out there, and a lot of people will start into it, and then you see them a few years later, and like, yeah, I didn't want to do it anymore. That's too much work. That's this. That's that. I dropped out. You know, something happened. Whatever. If you drop out of high school, it's hard to get good enough grades ever again to get into, you know, a program to get going. It's not going to happen. Okay. There was a kid a couple of years ago. I'll never forget. One person told me I was mean. I was like, I'm not being mean. I'm just trying to help this kid see something. I'm trying to encourage him to do his work. And he had some time to work. And so I asked him, why aren't you working? And he says, well, you know, I don't really have any homework to do. I'm like, dude, you're getting an F in biology. And he goes, well, yeah. I'm like, well, maybe you have some homework to do. He's like, I hate biology. I hate gross things. I'm like, oh, okay. I said, well, what do you want to do when you grow up? I'm trying to encourage him. I really was trying hard to encourage him. He's like, I want to be a surgeon. And I went, oh, okay. And I said, dude, how can you think about being a surgeon? You don't even do high school biology. He goes, well, what are you saying? I'm like, well, it's kind of the foundation of everything in medicine is biology, and specifically high school biology level. It's kind of important. And he goes, so I said, what's the probability you're gonna become a surgeon, do you think, now at this point? He's like, I'm like, okay, let me put it this way. Would you want you operating on you? And he goes, no. I'm like, well, there you go, okay? And the idea that you don't want to get your hands dirty, well, you're not gonna be a surgeon. What are you talking about, okay? But again, when we see this a lot in our lives, now that this decision has been made, it's gonna be kind of hard to go and do something different at this point, right? And that's how life goes, but that's a conditional probability situation, okay? Given that this has already happened, now what's the probability? No, he wasn't messing with me. He was dead serious. I actually asked him, well, before I asked him if he would operate on himself, I asked him, I said, I wouldn't let you cut my bologna sandwich, but that's what I got accused of being mean about. But anyway, different story. But anyway, just the idea of yeah, kids don't try to mess with me that much. They're just serious about their things sometimes. They don't think ahead though. So kind of keep that in your mind as we go through this week. Keep in mind conditional probability and dependent probability, and really think about this week as you're doing your daily life, not your work stuff so much, but your daily life, going about your daily life, daily business. When you make a decision, stop and ask yourself or think to yourself, why did I do that? You know, what did I base that decision on? Because everything that you do is going to be based on your past experiences, all right? If you've ever come into a situation where you have no experience about something, a lot of times you stand there kind of doe-eyed, just kind of going, I don't know what to do, man. And you sit there and watch what happens. And people that have been there maybe before are kind of like, ooh, is he going to do something? What's going to happen here? But they don't move, they don't do anything, and you don't for a few minutes until you start to like process and see what's going on, and then you can make a somewhat an informed decision. But I really think about that this week as you're going along. This week, 2.1, 2.2, 2.3 is what you should be working on this week. Watch those videos. Some of it you might find to be nice and easy review, and other stuff you'd be like, oh, I've never seen this before. The homework's pretty straightforward, I think. Again, if you have any questions, you let me know. Sometime by the middle of next week, at least, I will know when my office hour will be. Again, I kind of have to wait till all this stuff kind of shakes out to high school before I go setting up times. It probably will be during the day because I have to be some online hours, I think, from the high school as well. So we'll kind of play that by ear, though. Yeah, I think that's about it, though, I think, for tonight. Next week, in the videos, there will be a video about some more with conditional probability. I'll do some more with it, both some with the pivot tables and giving you some examples, for instance, like this STD one, or the cops stealing your car, or not cops stealing your cars, cops finding your cars, they're stolen, that sort of thing as well. So I'll try to again give it from both a data standpoint, like how we do it, quote unquote, in the real world, and then also kind of like some book standpoints as well. Question? Laura? Yes, I know. I forgot. As soon as I saw you pop up, I thought to myself, yes, I need to talk to you. Can you, here, I'll respond back to you. Call me. That's my phone number here. There you go. So Laura, call me as soon as this meeting's over, all right? And we'll chat. I feel bad. I saw your email the other day. Yeah, any questions? Anybody have any questions?
I have a question.
Get me.
On the homework here, when is that due? And you talked about maybe scanning that in earlier. Is there a module posted for that? Because I looked for one, I didn't find one.
No, it's not up there yet. I will have it in.
Okay.
And it won't be due before next week. And
Okay.
it'll probably be the week after next. I'll start having some of them come in a little
Okay,
bit at a
sounds good.
time. And just pictures or scan. Don't get all worried about it or whatever. Some people I know,
Okay.
like, concerned that they don't have a scanner or something. Don't worry about that.
I have a scanner.
Topher, I don't know how to code that. I have seen it before somewhere, but I don't know how to code. No, I don't really care if you write the questions down per se. Show me your work though, if there's like stuff that you have to do in terms of, I mean, some people like Bobby, I think does a really cool job where they have, like it's all in this giant, what is that thing? Is giant iPad thing he writes on sometimes. Some people do a really fancy stuff. That's cool. If that's how you do it, that's great. Otherwise, just on paper, do the answers, write it down. As far as I'm concerned, me personally, I hope that you learn how to do it properly and everything. But if I'm in your shoes, I'm just gonna, because it's worth so little of my grade in terms of that, it's like 10% of your grade. The idea would be, if it were me anyways, I would just make sure that I got them right. So make sure I ask a lot of questions and stuff. I'm not going to go over it that closely when I grade it. So I'll sweat that. 2229. That's it. U2229. Huh. All right. Any other questions? Nope. All righty. Well, have a good week. Email me if you have any questions, and take care. Stay out of trouble. Oh, one more. Here we go. All right. Good night. See y'all later. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye, Jay.